Hello and welcome to IADS Retail Park, where we dig into the stories behind retail's most compelling transformations. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're one of our regular listeners, thanks for being here. I'm Maya, and this is the show that connects you with the strategic minds reshaping how we think about commerce, customer relationships, and what it really takes to build lasting retail success. Just a quick note before we get started. This podcast uses AI cloned voices created with human oversight to ensure quality and accuracy. Today I'm talking with Christine, who's just completed an exclusive into one of retail's most counterintuitive success stories. Christine, I've been looking forward to this conversation because your research on Fortnum and Mason really challenges some fundamental assumptions about how department stores should operate.
Maya, what kept striking me throughout this research was how Fortnum and Mason has essentially built their entire business model around doing what most retail consultants would tell you not to do. When you see that 63% of their £228 million revenue comes from just food and drink, most people's first reaction is that they're dangerously overexposed to one category. But when you dig deeper, you realize they've actually created something much more sophisticated than simple category concentration.
That's such an important distinction because on paper, having nearly 2/3 of your revenue in one area does sound risky. But you're suggesting there's a strategic logic here that goes beyond just selling tea and biscuits.
Yes, definitely, Maya. What they've done is turn food and drink into a platform for storytelling, experience creation, and relationship building. When someone buys their Earl Grey, they're not just purchasing tea, they're buying into 300 years of royal connections, British heritage, and this carefully curated sense of refinement. The product becomes secondary to the narrative they've built around it. And that narrative is incredibly difficult for competitors to replicate because it's rooted in genuine history and cultural positioning.
Christine, this connects to something I've been thinking about regarding brand authenticity. There's so much discussion about how brands can create authentic connections with customers, but Fortnum and Mason seems to have solved this by simply being authentic from the beginning. Their royal warrants aren't marketing gimmicks, they're actual historical relationships with the crown.
That's exactly right. And it highlights why their approach works where others might fail. When you trace their story back to William Fortnum selling repurposed royal candles in 1707, you see this thread of resourcefulness and proximity to power that runs through everything they do today. Their subscription services, their AI forecasting systems, their premium delivery partnerships. So all of these modern innovations feel natural because they're extensions of this core identity rather than departures from it. They're not trying to become something else, they're becoming a better version of what they've always been.
Now, let's talk about those innovations, because I think this is where your analysis gets really interesting. You're describing a company that's simultaneously very traditional and quite forward thinking operationally.
You've got a point there, Maya. So, what fascinates me the most is how they've managed to implement genuinely sophisticated operational improvements without any of it feeling jarring or out of place. Take their move from spreadsheet based merchandising to AI powered forecasting systems developed by Relex. That's a pretty significant tech upgrade, but it serves the same fundamental purpose, ensuring they have the right products available when customers want them. So the technology changes, but the customer experience remains consistent with their brand promise. Similarly, their subscription models aren't just about recurring revenue, though that's certainly beneficial. The T-Post subscription at £100 annually comes with personalized china, creating this ritual around the brand that extends far beyond the transaction.
The subscription angle is very clever because it addresses one of the traditional challenges of seasonal businesses. Fortnum and Mason has historically been associated with Christmas hampers and special occasions.
You've just mentioned something crucial there, Maya. By developing these ongoing subscription relationships, they're fundamentally changing their relationship with customers from episodic to continuous. Instead of waiting for customers to think of them during holiday seasons or special occasions, they're creating reasons for customers to engage with the brand monthly. The biscuit post at £20 per month, the tea time dispatch at £75. These aren't just product deliveries, they're creating habits and routines around the brand. And habits are incredibly powerful in retail because they reduce the customer's decision making process while increasing lifetime value.
This seems to tie into their physical space strategy as well. You mentioned their £24 million refurbishment prioritized experience over retail square footage.
The spatial decisions they've made really reinforce everything we've been discussing about their strategic approach. Most retailers would look at prime Piccadilly real estate and think about maximizing selling space. But Fortnum and Mason has dedicated 4 out of 6 floors to food and beverage experiences. They have restaurants, a wine bar, cooking studios, even that speakeasy style cocktail bar on the third floor. What they've created is less a department store and more a destination where retail happens to occur. Customers aren't just coming to buy something and leave, they're coming to spend time, to experience something they can't get elsewhere.
And the financial results suggest this experiential approach is working. You mentioned in your exclusive that they've reached £9.3 million in pre tax profit, which is impressive for what's essentially a single location operation.
Those numbers tell a story about the power of concentration versus dispersion. While other department stores are spreading their resources across multiple locations, multiple categories, multiple customer segments, Fortum and Mason has concentrated everything into creating the definitive expression of their brand. Their profit margins are sustainable because they're not constantly diluting their positioning or competing on price. When customers come to Fortnum and Mason, they're not comparison shopping. They're seeking something specific that only Fortnum and Mason can provide. That's an incredibly powerful position to occupy in retail.
But this concentration strategy does create vulnerabilities, particularly around supply chain issues. Your research highlighted some concerning trends in tea production.
This is where the story becomes more complex and, frankly, more interesting from a strategic perspective. Darjeeling tea production has fallen to 170-year lows. Assam output is down 7.8%, and these aren't temporary fluctuations. They're indicative of larger climate driven changes that could permanently alter agricultural production in these regions. For most retailers, supply disruptions in one category would be manageable because they have other revenue streams to fall back on. But when nearly two-thirds of your business depends on products sourced from climatically vulnerable regions, supply chain resilience becomes an existential question rather than just an operational challenge.
How do you think they're positioned to handle these kinds of long term supply pressures?
They've made some smart operational moves, consolidating their distribution from 4 centers to one, implementing more sophisticated demand forecasting, building relationships with premium suppliers who can maintain quality even when quantities are constrained. But ultimately, they're facing the same fundamental challenge as any business built around specific agricultural products. Climate change doesn't respect brand positioning or customer loyalty. What's interesting is how they might use their brand strength to navigate these challenges. Their customers aren't just buying tea, they're buying the Fortnum and Mason experience. That gives them more flexibility to adapt their product mix while maintaining customer relationships than a purely product focused business would have.
This raises broader questions about the sustainability of highly specialized retail strategies in an uncertain world.
It's a fascinating tension, isn't it? Fortnum and Mason's success demonstrates the incredible competitive advantages that come from deep specialization. Stronger customer relationships, higher margins, clearer brand positioning, more defensible market position. But specialization also concentrates risk in ways that diversified businesses don't experience. The question becomes whether the benefits of specialization are sufficient to justify the concentrated risks and whether there are ways to build resilience without sacrificing the focus that creates competitive advantage in the first place. I don't think there are easy answers, but Fortnum and Mason provides a compelling case study for thinking through these trade-offs.
What do you think other retailers can learn from their approach, particularly those who might be considering more focused strategies?
I would say that the most important lesson is probably about the discipline required to say no to opportunities that don't align with your core identity. Fortnum and Mason has succeeded not just because of what they've chosen to do, but because of what they've chosen not to do. They haven't chased every retail trend, they haven't expanded into every possible category, they haven't opened stores in every major city. That kind of strategic restraint is incredibly difficult to maintain, especially when you're seeing competitors grow rapidly or when you're facing pressure from investors or stakeholders who equate growth with success. But the results suggest that sometimes the most powerful growth strategy is choosing not to grow in certain directions so you can grow effectively in others.
Christine, this has been such a rich conversation. For listeners who want to explore your complete exclusive and all the detailed research, you'll find a link to the full exclusive report in our episode description. And while you're there, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn at International Association of Department Stores and check out our Substack for even more retail insights and analysis.
Thanks for having me, Maya. It's always a pleasure to dig into these strategic questions with you.
That wraps up today's episode of IADS Retail Park. I'm Maya, and I've been talking with Christine Montard about her fascinating research into Fortnum and Mason's approach to strategic specialization. Thanks for listening, and catch us on the next episode for another deep dive into the ideas reshaping retail.